Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to continue our discussion, or actually conclude our discussion of Season 1 of Sandman. We also have some news stories to go over, and a few things coming up on the horizon. Let's jump right into our news stories with our On Beat segment. On Beat is, of course, our news segment, and we're kicking things off with The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. It's been announced now that they're going to debut the season with 2 episodes at once. They're going to release those on September 1st. It's like September 1st / September 2nd because it's worldwide. So depending on the time zone you're in, for both you and I, it's going to be September 1st. So it's going to be 6 p.m. Pacific time for me, which would mean 9 p.m. Eastern time for you, right?
Probably, yeah.
So that's when it's going to air. Those 2 episodes are going to drop at once. A big part of this is that this was an intentional decision to release 2 episodes at once, not because it's not like The Boys where they're like, oh, you need to get into the season, so we need to drop 2. They're intentionally doing it so that they can avoid their season finale going head to head with House of the Dragon.
They scared.
Yeah.
They scared.
So it's interesting that initially those were both going to line up to be within days of each other. Now there's going to be about a 1 week gap.
Yeah, because I'm guessing Amazon really wants to announce major finale numbers for Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And they're afraid they won't get that if it's on the same day as House of the Dragon.
Yeah. And it wasn't going to be on the same day. It was going to be on a different day, but it was going to be within days, you know?
Oh, I see. Okay.
And now it was going to be like a 2-day difference or something. And now they got like a week. So yeah. It's still not maybe ideal, but it's like at least they got a little bit of space where they can be like the big event for that week, you know, instead of competing with House of the Dragon.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah. That's going to be that story. It's not that big of a story, but if you're looking forward to The Rings of Power, it's going to be September 1st and the first 2 episodes drop. September 1st if you're in America. If you're in other places, it could be the 2nd. Like I said, it's going to release everywhere at the same time. Our next news story, the long in development John Wick prequel series. I think this first was announced in 2018 or 2017.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while since this was announced that they were going to be doing the spin-off series of John Wick called the Continental. It was originally announced it didn't have like a home, and then it was going to be on Starz. Now it's going to be on Peacock, and it's coming in 2023. So that's the news we have. For anybody who doesn't know, it's going to be a 3-episode event series. So I don't think there's any plans for there to be like a second season. It's like just a 3-episode thing. Mm-hmm. And it's set in New York in 1975, and it's going to be following a young Winston Scott, who in the movies, in the John Wick movies, he's like the guy that runs the Continental Hotel, which is this whole like underworld hotel thing where, you know, hitmen and stuff stay, and there's like all these rules that you can't do business on the Continental, and it's a big part of the mythology of John Wick. Winston Scott in the movies is played by Ian McShane, who is obviously not going to be playing his same character in 1975.
No, yeah.
But that's it. So John Wick fans rejoice. The Continental coming to Peacock in 2023 for a 3-episode event series. Next up, Nexstar Media Group has purchased a 75% stake in the CW. Warner and Paramount are going to retain 12.5% each. So that's the other 25%. So now it's going to be owned by 3 companies.
This would have been a pretty boring news, except for like one interesting tidbit that Nexstar announced. Apparently, the average viewing age for the CW is 58 years old, according to Nexstar, and they're going to shift.
Which is laughable if you know what the content is on CW.
They're all it's Archie, man. All these people, they remember reading Archie comics when they were kids, and so they're like, oh, we're all about the Archie show.
It's all teen melodrama shows. So it's so funny that this has become 58-year-old demographic for Riverdale and Gossip Girl and
yeah, exactly. But don't worry, Nexstar says they're going to be shifting the programming to better serve this demographic in the future. So expect less Gossip Girl and more reality TV shows.
So they're going to better reach the 58-year-olds. They're going to better reach the 58-year-olds who watch the CW for these kids' shows by making shows that they don't watch.
Riverdale is just going to transform into a CSI clone.
Yeah. They're like, can we bring Luke Perry back from the grave and make it about him now?
Yeah, really. Oh, God.
It's ridiculous. The main thing that comes into account is that most of the CW content that's watched by its actual demographic of like teens and stuff is watched on like streaming services and stuff. They don't actually watch it on the channel. So that leaves the people that would still be interested in that content who are older are watching it still on the channel because they're less tech savvy and less into streaming stuff. They just want to watch on broadcast TV.
Exactly.
It's just such a weird story. We're getting a lot of like bad takes by executives of content companies in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think these executives inheriting these content companies through mergers and stuff just really don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, they're just not in the right mindset to understand.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's it for our regular news stories. Lastly, we have 2 trailers we're going to discuss that were released. Starting off with Cobra Kai. We've had a few I think we had like 2 teaser trailers for it that were both very brief.
Teasers, yeah.
And this was our first like real trailer for it.
This is a full season trailer. Lots of excitement, lots of action, lots of melodrama. The trailer looks like everything that you love from Cobra Kai, like, turned up. It's like another notch.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
It looks like bigger stakes and...
Yeah, bigger stakes. Cobra Kai's got all these new senseis, like, he flies in, like, all of them. Funny enough, we know Mike Barnes is going to be in this season. He was not in this trailer.
Yeah, he was not. He's going to be one of those senseis they fly in, apparently.
Yeah, they're keeping some mystery around his character this season, which is interesting.
Well, it's interesting because before this trailer, they released pictures with him in them, you know?
Yeah, they did.
These aren't leaks. These are like officially released pictures, you know, from the season. So maybe he's not going to come back in the capacity that we're expecting, and that's why.
Yeah, that's why
we're not seeing it in the trailer. Maybe he's going to come back on the other side.
That'd be real interesting twist, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
There's some good stuff in this trailer. I saw Johnny's an Uber driver.
Yeah. So 1 star because it smells like beer? It is beer, you idiot.
Yeah.
They're still having Robbie and I can't even remember the other kid. Miguel, yeah. They're still having Robbie and Miguel like fighting each other constantly, like hating on each other. I'm hoping that that's being played up more in the trailer than it actually is in the show.
I hope that gets resolved by the end of the season. But
I mean, if not completely, at least like, you know, toned down a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's interesting because we know that Miguel's now going to Mexico or in Mexico at the point that the last season ended, and that Robbie and his dad were going to go looking for him. Yeah. Robbie and Johnny. And here, everything we're seeing seems to be they're already back.
Yeah.
Involved in it. So I'm wondering how long this part of the story is going to be. Like, it doesn't seem like it's like Stranger Things where everybody's separate for like the whole season and only comes together at the very end, you know?
It's going to pull What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
Where they separated at the end of the season and the beginning of the new season. Like, it's them coming back from the trip.
Yeah.
And they're
we missed the trip. Then maybe we'll get like a Cobra Kai movie that fills in the space between.
Yeah, that fills in the space between. Yeah, exactly.
But that's the Cobra Kai trailer. Anything else to say about that?
No, I think we covered everything.
And we finally got our first real trailer. We had a teaser. It was literally just the character walking up and snapping her fingers, and that was all we had from the original teaser. We actually got a real trailer for Wednesday, which is the Addams Family spin-off / sequel / reboot series for Netflix being done by Tim Burton. What are your thoughts? Were you a fan of the Addams Family, either the movies or the original series, or?
I haven't seen much of the original series. I did watch the first 2 movies, I did watch the 2 movies. The movies when they were out in the early 90s, and I enjoyed them. Like, I thought they were fun movies, so I was aware of this. Watched this, and I'm I don't know if I care too much about this show. It just looks like, what if Wednesday went to Hogwarts? And I don't know if that's like an interesting premise.
I just like that it's heading back into darker territory because, like, I didn't really watch it. I just watched clips and trailers and stuff, but there have been a few, like, TV shows and spin-offs and other things that have happened related to Addams Family, including recently, like, a CG movie that were really bad, really dumbed everything down, really made it more, like, child-friendly and stuff. And Addams Family was always more, like, weird than that, and the movies in particular were fairly dark. So I'm just glad that, like, that's back, you know, that, like, it's more, like, tonally in line with, like, the original movies, at least a bit, you know?
Well, the issue I have is, like, I don't know how interesting it's going to be with Wednesday around all these characters who are potentially as weird as she is and are more readily accept her. Because, like, the humor in the Addams Family was always how they clashed against, like, normal, everyday people. And it just, like, you get that element at the beginning of the trailer, but it's one of those things where this is what it was, but this is the new concept we're doing now. And it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think I have enough hope that I'm going to watch it. I don't know if I'm going to like it.
Right.
If it is good, though, it's not only a return to form for Addams Family, but it's also a return to form for Tim Burton. So
yeah, if it is good, because Tim Burton, like, people might point out, oh, it's Tim Burton. I'm like, Tim Burton peaked in the 80s.
Yeah.
Sorry to say. But,
yeah, you know, 80s like, and the early 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It was all downhill after Edward Scissorhands, you know?
Right? I didn't watch that movie. Like, the last movie, like, I watched of his I really enjoyed was, like, I think, Beetlejuice.
Well, Beetlejuice was before Batman Returns.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. No, never mind. It was definitely Batman Returns. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was good all the way up through, like, Mars Attacks. I think after Mars Attacks, it started going downhill.
I didn't watch that one either.
It's fun. It's just, it's cool because it's got so much of that 50s schlock sci-fi kind of style to it.
Oh, yeah. It was based off of, like, I think, like, a trading card series by Topps.
Yeah, kind of like a Garbage Pail Kids type of, you know,
yeah,
thing,
exactly.
But, like, with that kind of sci-fi tropes and stuff. Yeah, that's what Mars Attacks was, and it was good. And then after that, he started getting, like, I don't know, started losing a bit of his style. It started looking a little cheesy with a lot of his stuff. I don't know. Wasn't into it much after that.
No.
But I'm going to give Wednesday a try, and I'm hopeful.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that is it for our news. Now we're going to move on to our next segment, which is On the Horizon. On the Horizon, of course, where we talk about stuff that's coming up in the next week or so. We're going to kick things off with House of the Dragon, which begins on Sunday, August 21st on HBO. So, are you going to, like, day one watch this? Are you hyped up to watch this? Are you hesitant?
Of course.
Are you nervous?
You're asking a bunch of questions. Yes, I'm going to watch this on day one. Yes, I'm hyped. Of course.
Yes. Yeah, I'm watching it day one. I'm having a few people over. We're doing, like, a little watch party. We used to do, like, these really elaborate watch parties for Game of Thrones. We had, like, decorations everywhere around our house. We're not going that far. We're doing it much lighter, but we are having some people over to watch. Some people that used to come over when we did the Game of Thrones nights. So we're going to kind of do that just for the first episode and then kind of decide, is this something we want to, like, meet up weekly for and watch the same way we did with Game of Thrones, or is that kind of over? So yeah, I mean, I've heard good things. It's funny that I've heard it described as, like, it's like Game of Thrones meets Succession, because I remember when Succession was first being promoted, people were saying it's like Game of Thrones without dragons, and now they're like, it's like Succession with dragons. It's like it just came full
Hell,
circle.
the turns tables.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited for it. I've heard lots of good things from people who have watched advanced screeners for it and stuff, have said very good things about it.
Nice.
Maybe this is a return to form for Game of Thrones. Speaking of return to forms. So, that's coming on Sunday, August 21st. Then on Tuesday, August 23rd, the new Saints Row reboot, game comes out on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PC, and Stadia, which is all too rarely mentioned.
Actually getting a new game. That's amazing.
It's funny because even on, like, the sources that I used to look up the stuff, it didn't mention Stadia, but I already knew it was coming out on Stadia and just had to double check. But Saints Row. Have you ever played any of the Saints Row games?
I have not. I need to.
Saints Row is like GTA, but like really ridiculous and over the top and fun.
Yeah.
Like instead of trying to make things serious, like with the story, it's like if they just went all the insane, like nuts, stupid shit from GTA. That's like the whole game in Saints Row. I'm a little nervous about this game because it looks like before we started this podcast, we were talking about the good side and bad side of like woke stuff, you know? I'm kind of waiting to see what people's impressions are of this because it feels like it's kind of towing the line between those two. And I'm interested to see where it falls between those two spaces, you know? But Saints Row, man, big game. There aren't that many games besides Switch games this year that are coming out, huh?
Not that I can think of. The only other big games I can think of off the top of my head besides Saints Row are Gotham Knights and God of War Ragnarok. Mm-hmm. And obviously Call of Duty, I guess, for the people in the
Nobody's excited about that anymore.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I could think of for this year.
Yeah, besides Switch. Like, Switch has got like a really
Switch
busy year.
Yeah, Switch is like, we're getting Splatoon, then we're getting Bayonetta, then we're getting Pokemon.
We're getting some old games that are big ones, like Nier, Automata.
Yeah, Switch is having a fantastic year.
Everything else seems to be, it's funny because that's the general impression. If you like listen to like gaming podcasts or something, everybody's talking about like, oh, this is just not a great year for gaming. And then somebody will mention Switch and everybody goes, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's the exception that proves the rule, you know? But that's Saints Row coming on Tuesday, August 23rd to pretty much everything except the Switch. Then coming on Wednesday, August 24th on FXX is Archer. Yes. So Archer is returning again. It's still going. I think this might be its final season, but I'm not sure. Just more animated spy comedy.
Yeah. Archer wasn't something I could get into. Like I watched an episode or two here and there and just can't really get into it.
Yeah. It's funny, but it's like sometimes it feels a little pointless. Like,
right.
Then the next day, Archer is kicking off some animated shows. The next day on Thursday, August 25th on FXX as well, Little Demon comes out. I know you weren't too interested in it based on the trailer. I'm excited just because it's Dan Harmon, it's Aubrey Plaza, it's Danny DeVito. Like, the people involved in it are really exciting for me.
Right, yeah.
Also on Thursday, August 25th, Star Trek Lower Decks returns on Paramount Plus. I haven't watched Lower Decks, but what I do know is that all of the Trekkies that I talk to, you know, the ones that all hate the new Trek stuff, with apologies to Koenig, all of them seem to actually love Lower Decks. It's like the one new Trek thing that everybody universally loves. And that's coming before, was it Brave New World is the new one?
Yeah.
That people also seem to really be digging that one, at least more so than the other live action ones. But Lower Decks seems to be kind of universally beloved by the Trek community. That is returning on Thursday, August 25th. Then on Friday, August 26th, Samaritan comes to Amazon Prime. This is the Sylvester Stallone retired superhero movie.
That movie. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'll watch it. It looks like it'll be fun.
Yeah, it looks all right.
I don't know if it'll be good, but but I'll watch it. Also on Friday, August 26th, C returns on Apple TV Plus. This is Jason Momoa's series about everybody being blind or something. I've never watched this. I don't have Apple TV Plus.
Oh, see, yeah, I don't know. Apple TV Plus is apparently a really good service to have. It has a lot of great shows on it.
Yeah, pretty much most of the stuff coming out to it seems to be critically lauded. You know, with like the morning show and then Ted Lasso, and then
it's funny
Severance
with like
has been getting a lot of buzz.
Yeah, it's funny now with like what David Zaslav is doing to Warner Brothers and HBO and stuff. Apple TV Plus might be the new home for prestige TV.
Am I going to have to pay Apple money? No,
yeah,
I don't want to pay Apple money.
Yeah.
And then lastly, for our On the Horizon segment, also coming on Friday, August 26th, 3,000 Years of Longing is coming to theaters. This is the new George Miller movie. George Miller, of course, Mad Max, all the Mad Max movies, basically. This has got Idris Elba in it playing a djinn or genie, and Tilda Swinton being the woman that is granting his wishes. I've heard mixed things. It looks like it's a bit of a horny movie. But the key points to really pay attention to is that this is George Miller, who did the Mad Max movies. He's an interesting auteur-ish director. And Idris Elba, of course, is always good, even when he's in schlocky stuff.
Yes.
So I have no idea if this will be any good, but I'm somewhat interested in watching it. This is going to be one of those movies that I don't go to with my mom, though. I don't really want to watch a horny movie with my mom. That would be really weird.
Yeah, that'd be really weird, yes.
That's it for our On the Horizon segment, though, and that only leaves our final segment, full spoilers. This week on Full Spoilers, we are going to be talking about the second half of the first season of The Sandman from Netflix. This was a little bit of a downstep after the first half, I think. I think I like this a little bit less than the first half of the series. I heard a complaint that I kind of agree with, which is just that, like, they have the right elements there, but it just seems like you don't really get to know a lot of the characters that you should care about.
Yeah.
Like, they introduce all these interesting characters in the bread and breakfast part of this, last half of the season.
But they're mostly there.
Yeah, they're just kind of there. You don't really get to know them.
Even Lyda, her storyline, which they focus a lot more on her than other characters. I actually did not really care for her side story. Like,
it's because you just don't get to know her. It's just basically like, here's this woman, dramatic stuff is happening to her. Care.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, I don't know her.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know her as a character. Like, you haven't done your job there, So that's a little bit kind of annoying with it all. We had kind of like, I think the 6th episode, which doesn't really relate to this, like the elements of this start coming in.
It's a shame because like there's no episode in this back half that's as strong as the episode in the diner.
Yeah, I'd say the 6th episode is strong in a different way.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's not tense or anything, but that's the episode that begins with Death kind of guiding Dream around, like showing him kind of like what he does.
Yeah. That was an interesting episode.
Yeah,
I mean, I thought it was an interesting episode. It's a one-off because it's not like really related to anything else happening in the season.
Yeah.
Like, other than Dream being like at a loss to like what he's supposed to be doing next.
It kind of actually, like, it's good, but, like, the way Dream acts, like, immediately after this episode is, like, feels off and foreign, like they shot him out of order or something. But this episode not only featured Death, but it was also the episode where you get to meet his friend, his human friend Hob, who is denied Death's gift because he wants to live forever.
Well, yeah, they find Hob in a pub in, like, the 1300s, and he is bragging that, well, he's noting that, like, there's a lot of death around him all the time, and he brags very loudly that he will never die. And Death and Dream are amused by that, and they use that to make a bet with each other that, if they give him eternal life by denying him Death's gift, he's going to be begging for it eventually. Dream makes a deal with him. He's going to visit him every 100 years and check up on him and find out about his life, expecting him to be begging for death. And to Dream's surprise, he still doesn't want to die.
Yeah, they even had, like, one of the eras they came back to, he had talked about, like, the year before the time before the last meeting, he had talked about how he had a wife and a son and everything was going well with his business. And the next time he sees him, his wife had died.
Destitute.
His son had died without having an heir. He died in, like, a gunfight or something when he was in his 20s. Before he got to get a life going, he lost his business. He lost all his money. He was destitute. And he seemed, like, resentful of Dream. And like, he just seemed like really angry and upset. And so Dream's like, so I guess you don't want to live forever anymore. And he's like, are you kidding me? I have so much to live for.
Yeah.
It was like a cool twist. I really like this episode, actually. It's very different than episode 5 was. Episode 5 with the diner and everything, that was like a horror episode. That was, there had a very specific tension and stuff. This was like a really sweet episode.
Yeah,
it was a very kind of different episode. So it's hard to say, like, it's not as good as the other episode because it's not as, like, tense. Or it's not as, because it's a completely different kind of episode,
I will say it, but yeah,
this episode gave me emotions too, though. Like, when
you are entitled to your opinion.
when we knew that the next meeting they were going to have happened during the time in which Sandman was locked up.
Yeah, his imprisonment.
Yeah, and you knew that even before it happened. It's like, oh, so their next meeting he's going to miss. And the way they had a fight right after it. And they'd kind of developed this bond. And then, like, they had this fight, and he's like, well, when I see you again in 100 years, I'll know that we're friends. And then knowing that that's not going to happen, even before you see that scene, it's like heartbreaking.
Yeah, but I mean, it turned out all right. He went to meet him, and he said, "Oh, I'm late. I guess I'm late or something." And like they resumed being friends. So
yeah, but that was like such a sweet moment when that was done. You know, it was like really like a heartfelt. I think like that's what I'm trying to say is like episode 5 was super tense. It was super impressive in that way. This was impressive in a different way. Like this kind of like hit on your emotions in a different way than the last episode did. So I like the fact that the direct follow up to like the most tense and horrific episode of the season is like this very like lighthearted kind of fun story, you know.
And then we go from that really into the major plot of the second half,
where everything kind of started falling apart.
Yeah, you're right. Which is basically Rose Walker in the Vortex. She is the Vortex, which is the major plot of the second half.
It's interesting that they had it be one of the people that was asleep because Dream was captured, wakes up, you know, and she'd had like a kid and didn't even know it. And now she has like a great grandchild or whatever. Which is like the second they announced that, they're being like really light about it. And I'm like, well, what that means is that she was raped when she was unconscious.
Yes.
Because she was literally a child when, you know.
Yeah, she was literally a child. Yeah. She went unconscious. Yeah, so yeah, she was raped, and we find out who did the raping.
At the very end of the season, we did.
At the very end of the season, yeah.
But I was all tied to some really nice twists. The problem is that there's so many characters introduced here, so many concepts introduced here, and we're not really given any time to grow. Like, this is one of those cases where this really should have probably been the second season of Sandman.
Yes.
Like, this should have been Sandman season 2. It should have stretched out over the course of like 10 episodes, and we should have gotten more, like, you know, from this. We should have been introduced to the characters in a more deep way where we actually got to kind of care about them, like all the characters in the B&B, who are all like very interesting characters who are immediately they're immediately identified and categorized. Like, you see them and you're like, oh, this character is like this, and this character is like this, and oh, this character is kind of interesting because they're like this. And it's like, all that's good and all, but you don't get to know any of them.
Yeah.
So you don't get really to like care about any of them, really. Like, they're iconic. So you, like, when you look back, like let's say one of them appears in season 3, you're not going to be like, who was that again? Because they're made iconic enough.
The character focus is very much on Rose and Jed Walker than anybody else. That's where it is. We get introduced to 2 new dreams or nightmares that have went missing. We knew about the Corinthian. He was in the first half. He plays a major role in this half too. He's still looking for a way to defeat Dream and escape, and he finds that in Rose Walker, who he finds out is the Vortex.
So we know of another nightmare who disappeared, who's Galt. He's like a shapeshifter nightmare, and then a Dream who disappeared, the one that kind of surprised Morpheus with his disappearance.
Yeah, Fiddler's Green.
Fiddler's Green.
Yeah. And what's cool is like you pretty much find out who Galt is right away, but you never like see Fiddler's Green. And then like, but there is like one resident of the B&B, you know, who appears like, who you don't see initially, who appears out of nowhere to save Rose in one scene. And this character is Gilbert, played beautifully by Stephen Fry.
Who's like a national treasure of Europe, you know, or of England, you know?
Yeah. And you know, like, and you think like Gilbert's just this eccentric character. Well, they're all eccentric characters living in that B&B. But Gilbert is especially eccentric. And then
I pegged him as an important character, but as the completely wrong character.
Oh, okay.
I totally thought he was Destiny.
I pegged Gilbert as Fiddler's Green because I was like, wait, okay, we haven't seen Fiddler's Green at all.
I picked him as Destiny because I did a little bit of reading about Death's family or Dream's family.
Right.
Like, just because I was interested in like who else was going to show up and stuff. And I didn't really want to know story elements, but I wanted to know like who the characters are as like a base. Like, cause I was noticing all their names started with D and I wanted to see if that was a thing. And it indeed was.
The thing is like, yeah, it seems like the appearances of the other Endless they appear sparingly because Death only appears for one episode. And even then it's only like about half of that episode.
Yeah. Desire just kind of makes a few appearances here and there, and Despair is kind of barely in it.
Yeah. Despair is like in one scene.
I thought it was Destiny because when I read up a little bit about Destiny, it was saying that he's the oldest of Dream's family.
Right.
That he doesn't really like do anything. He knows everything that has and will happen. And all he does is sits around and reads, and he doesn't like exercise his power or do anything. And so when we meet Gilbert and he's just talking about reading all the time.
Oh, he's up in the attic. Yeah, they mentioned he's up in his like attic apartment or whatever, just reading all the time.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, that it's Destiny. Sense. I'm like, oh, that's going to be interesting because I knew he was more than met the eye. You know, like I knew there was something
that was obvious.
But I didn't even think of Fiddler's Green. Like I should have, but I didn't. Like, and my mind just went immediately to Destiny. I was like, oh, that's going to be Destiny. The area where I knew that wasn't the case was when he was at the convention and he started putting it together that it was like a serial killer convention. And I'm like, if it was Destiny, he'd already know that. Like he wouldn't be surprised, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
There was nobody there for him to pretend to be surprised. And then
like,
you know?
What really clinches it is though when he sees the Corinthian and he recognizes him.
Yeah, they recognize each other and he's like, oh crap.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we see almost immediately Dream and his librarian, Lucine, are talking and he just kind of shows up. And he's like, yeah, I'm back. He's like, I didn't leave to spite you or anything. He's like, I thought you were gone and I wanted to experience the world. And he's like, but you have to stop the Corinthian. He's like kind of just immediately like, that's that shocking, seeing the Corinthian, seeing all the serial killers of this convention and the perversion of what's happened to humanity in this moment, like kind of shocks Fiddler's Green into like, okay, I need to go back and resume my role. Like this is wrong, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
He like immediately recognizes that and returns. And I thought that was kind of interesting the way they played off his character.
Definitely.
I hope we see him in his human form again just because I love Stephen Fry, so.
Although the scene like where he transforms back into his dream, where Rose asks him, oh, who are you? And he's like, I'm not a who, I'm a what? I'm a place.
They're in this.
And then he transforms back into Fiddler's Green around Rose and everybody. And that's a beautiful scene.
It was interesting because it was our entire experience with the dreaming after Morpheus returns to the dreaming has been that it's all like rotted and decayed and it just looks like dead, you know?
Right.
And to our perception watching that, it's like, oh, because it's decayed over the years. But the real reason is because the greenery, the spirit and the lushness of that environment is a personified character. That's Fiddler's Green. And so they're in this desolate landscape. He returns to his form and everything's lush again.
We should explain the plot real quick. So the plot basically is Rose Walker is a vortex. A vortex is a human that comes around every once in a while. I don't think it's consistent. Even the Endless don't understand. Like, even Dream doesn't understand what causes a vortex or like fully understands the nature of vortexes. The only thing they understand is that vortexes are people who have the power to draw dreams to them. They have the power to break down the barriers between dreams. So between dreams and reality. This manifests in several ways. The biggest ways this manifests this season is through the character of Lyda, who is meeting her husband, her dead husband, in her dreams. And he turns out to be a ghost who has escaped into the dreaming. But the interesting thing is Lyda has sex with her dead husband in her dreams, and she ends up pregnant in the real world. And that's because of Rose Walker breaking down the barriers between the dream and reality.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is about this power isn't something that Rose can control. And eventually, as Dream himself puts it, the power grows so potent that it has the power to destroy like entire universes, to destroy the dreaming itself and even reality itself.
Mm-hmm. eventually a vortex is going to become a liability.
Yes, and Dream's only response to it is, like, she needs to die.
Yeah. He initially doesn't want to do it right away. He wants to actually use her to draw in the missing dreams and nightmares.
The missing dreams.
And he successfully does that with...
He successfully does that because they are drawn to Rose in different ways. You know, Fiddler's Green comes right to Rose's defense. The Corinthians is seeking out Rose because he knows what she is and what he can use her for.
And Galt, the nightmare Galt, is drawn to Rose's brother, ironically, to protect him.
Yes.
Which is one of the only good stories in this, I think, was that you have Rose's brother as basically being horribly abused by his foster parents.
Yes. His foster parents only have him for, like, the paycheck they get every month.
Mm-hmm.
And don't care for the idea of actually raising a child.
Oh, they'll, like, literally lock him up in the basement, like, chain him up, and, you know. So his only escape is in his dreams, and in his dreams he encounters Galt, who's a nightmare, but instead is taking on the role to, like, protect him and to entertain him and to alleviate his pain and to strengthen him against, like, what he suffers in the real world. And that, it's really interesting, and it kind of sucks at the same time, because it's a really interesting concept of a nightmare turning into a dream, you know, or like wanting to be a dream. It really kind of sucks because this is like the perfect example of Dream just basically flipping gears from being kind of like seeming like he's growing and becoming this like better leader because of his, you know, he's a little embittered by what humanity did to him, but because of his encounters with like Joanna Constantine and other people, like he's kind of recognized, and the whole thing with Hob and Death, he's kind of recognized that humanity isn't all bad and that maybe he should change. He's humbled at certain points for himself. And then like immediately in like episode 7, he basically just throws all of that out.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm just going to be a fucking asshole now.
Well, the thing is, and this is part of his growth arc too, because it has a payoff at the end of it, but he's basically like, there are rules and we have to stick to the rules.
Yeah.
These are the way things are. Like, there are even rules for me. We have to do things by the rules. And so when Galt explains to him she doesn't want to be a nightmare, she wants to be a dream, Dream is like, well, I made you as a nightmare. That's your function. That's what you are. You know, I can't change my function. Why should you be? You can't change your function. And he sends her into the darkness or whatever. You know, with Lucien, immediately regards as being especially harsh.
Yeah, I mean, he'd already, before that even happened, he had like this whole moment where Lucien was kind of advising him, his counsel on something else, and he was basically like, fuck off, you're just a librarian. And like, she's basically been running the dreaming while he's been gone, and she's being completely
was like
his most loyal follower, and he's just like, fuck off.
he doesn't use those words, but yeah.
Essentially.
Well, yeah, he essentially tells her the same thing. He says, well, your function is to be a librarian. Like, your function isn't to run the dreaming. Like, thank you for what you did in my absence, but I'm back now. I can do this.
Now know your damn place and fuck off.
Yeah.
That's kind of like his attitude in doing it. Like, it's very, like, negative. I also kind of didn't like that Matthew the Raven is portrayed by Patton Oswalt, voiced by Patton Oswalt, seems to kind of be like a link to humanity for him, like a driving force to kind of leaning him towards being better. But also
he
like a connection.
Accepts.
But also a connection between the librarian and him, because he's kind of working for both separately almost.
Right.
And they kind of, there's fertile ground to play with there, and they kind of hint at it and then never do anything with it. Like, they even have a part where like the Raven goes to Lucien, Matthew, and is like telling her something, and she's like, well, don't tell me. And he's like, well, should I still report it to Dream? And she's like, yes. Should I report it to you too? And she's like, no. And then he like apparently never reports it to like Morpheus. It's just kind of weird. Like, it doesn't, like, there's a lot of things that just don't make sense. Like, they make it look like they're developing that part of the story, and then nothing comes of it. They set up like, oh, Matthew the Raven is going to have to negotiate this area, and then we never see him negotiate that area.
We should talk about the climax of the season, which ends up at this cereal convention. Basically, the Corinthian has Jed, is using Jed as a lure for Rose. Corinthian went and killed Jed's foster parents and rescued him, air quotes. and is using him as a lure. And the thing is, like, he takes Jed to the serial convention because in an earlier episode, these serial killers who put on this convention, right, they idolize the Corinthian, and they invited him to be the guest speaker at the convention. And we find out that all these serial killers are kind of like the work of the Corinthian.
He kind of like influenced them, or
he influenced them, not in the fact that he was doing his thing and they idolize it, but in the fact that through his function as a nightmare, he influenced them via their dreams.
He like corrupted them.
Yeah.
What's interesting with this, again, is that his purpose for, like, it seems like when we're introduced to these killers and how they bring in the Corinthian, it all seems like this is just something he's going along with, cause like, oh, sure, okay, yeah, okay.
Right.
But like, there's a plan to it, and they don't really illustrate that, so eventually it comes to being as a plan, and that is like really interesting, but there's like no clues that it's a plan until that very moment.
Right, yeah.
You know, so it's kind of like, it's another area where I'm like, just a few more episodes in the season could have like developed that, in a way that made it give more impact.
There's a fantastic scene though where Morpheus confronts the Corinthian at the convention. Morpheus is about killing. Corinthians basically telling Morpheus, isn't this the reason that you made me? I'm just performing my function. And Morpheus is disgusted at what he sees, and he's just like, no, this was not your function. Like, you corrupted these people. You were supposed to inspire them in a different way or something.
Yeah. Well, he'd said it before. Yeah. He basically implied that, like, nightmares exist to get, like, not in relation to the Corinthian, but in relation to Galt.
Right.
Where he was saying, like, nightmares exist for humans to see their struggles or their limitations or whatever it may be, and to help them learn to overcome them.
Morpheus even says so much as the Corinthian was his masterpiece. And Morpheus says, like, the Corinthian's function was to show people, like, the worst sides of themselves so that they could aspire to, like, not be that.
Yes. And Corinthian kind of did the opposite.
Yeah, he kind of, like, encouraged them to be that.
What's, like I said, what makes a really interesting thing is by bringing all of those serial killers together, it's like a plot against Dream, because he has the vortex there, breaking down the walls between dreams, and all of these killers listening to his keynote, and he has them shut their eyes and visualize.
Start dreaming.
And by doing that, he's like controlling like a large number of dreams at once, breaking down the walls between them, making it a shared dream, and by doing so, has kind of taken away Morpheus's power to some extent.
Yes.
And so that's like a really cool plot idea of like a way to fight against Dream. I just wish they had developed that, instead of just revealing it. That's what I'm saying is like, it's a cool idea, and I wish they had set up more of like what Corinthian did to set that up instead of just having it like, oh, this just magically happened. It fell into his lap,
Right.
Because it's implied before that happens that all the stuff at the serial convention just fell into his lap, and it's implied after that happens that he had actually manipulated it all to happen.
I don't mind that.
We didn't see that.
See, I don't mind that too, like, as much as you do, because I think that's cool. I think that's a clever narrative sleight of hand.
Well, I like that it happened. I just think that what would make it work is if there had been moments that we just kind of passed over, like didn't pay attention to. And then when that reveal happened, all those moments kind of click in place in our heads, and we go, oh shit, like I get it now. This was his plan. That didn't
fill in those gaps. Anyway,
but I'm just saying, like, that didn't happen. So instead of being like an aha moment, it was like oh, this is an interesting idea. Like, the aha moment is gone. Like, it's not there. The puzzle pieces were not there for us. We saw that there was a puzzle, and then we saw the completed puzzle, and we never saw the pieces. That's what I mean. Like, it's kind of, to me, that feels like rushed writing. I wonder, this might have to do with the pandemic and filming during the pandemic.
And then the reveal at the end that Unity, who was the girl from the first episode, afflicted with sleeping sickness and Rose's great-grandmother, was actually supposed to be the Vortex. Because Dream was imprisoned, that was passed on to her granddaughter. And then the question is like, okay, but how did a woman in a permanent coma get pregnant? Somebody had to do that. And then it's mentioned that the person, they had eyes of gold, and like Dream immediately knows who she's talking about. it's Desire.
Yeah, Dream's sibling Desire.
So we saw, like, Desire for a second time. They're plotting with Despair.
Well, the thing is like how I was complaining about there not being the puzzle pieces for the other thing is it still isn't there. Like all the puzzle pieces weren't here for this reveal, but more of them were. So like you get kind of an aha moment with this, which I ended up liking this reveal a lot more because of that. It still felt a little rushed. Like there still could have been more moments with Desire to give us more clues as to what was happening to make it a better moment, but it was done better.
So Desire set up a situation where Dream would be forced to kill one of his relatives because if Rose is a granddaughter of Unity and Desire, that makes Rose one of the Endless.
Or like with endless blood, basically, or with, like...
Yeah, that makes Rose one of the Endless. So like the entire plot was Desire was going to trick Dream into killing one of his own relatives. And then Desire was going to get him on killing one of the Endless.
Yeah. Well, the thing is she's not one of the Endless. She has the Endless blood. They do make a point of that. That's a different thing.
I guess.
But the other thing is that... well, she's not an ethereal being,
Well, no, she's not.
But the thing is that while I did like this reveal a lot more, like I do feel that there were more clues, it would have been nice if the whole idea that killing one of their family, like the idea that was like a big no-no. Of course it's a no-no. You don't want to kill anybody in your family. But the idea that was like a huge deal to the Endless themselves should have been presented before that reveal happened. So that when that happens, you're like, oh shit, and you don't really get that moment. It's revealed, and then it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting, but it wasn't really set up beforehand.
And it's revealed, and when it's revealed, it's kind of like implied that would have been a huge fucking deal if he did that for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's never like stated like beforehand.
That's a clue that they should have dropped before.
Yeah. And then we got the ending with Lucifer and her generals plotting to do nasty stuff to Dream and everything else, and that's going to be season 2 apparently. Going to be exciting.
The will of the Dukes of Hell.
Mazakin. Yeah.
The will of the Dukes of Hell appear as Venom from Marvel appear through like a rift, and very rudely in a way that offended Lucifer pretty greatly. It appeared like she seemed really annoyed by it.
Yeah.
Exerted their position of like authority over Lucifer and saying like that they demand that you do something about this or something. At the same time, she does have a vendetta against Morpheus, so it's not something that she's opposed to, But like this puts Lucifer, it not only sets up something between Lucifer and Morpheus for season 2, but it also sets up that Lucifer is not happy about the Dukes of Hell exerting some kind of authority over her. So I think that that's going to make their next confrontation a bit more interesting, because it's not going to be so one-dimensional as just Dream versus Lucifer, but it's going to be Dream versus Lucifer, but also Lucifer, unhappy about what's going on with the Dukes of Hell.
So overall, last thoughts?
I think I really liked the series. I think that the second half of the series is not nearly as good as the first half of the series.
Yeah, I think agree.
The second half of the series is like a C, and the first half of the series is like a A-, maybe, It's really good.
I'm not going to give letter grades, but yeah, I agree. Generally, I felt the first half of this series was stronger than the second half. I'm still looking forward to season 2. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty positive that the third part of the story is going to be even better, but we will have to see when that happens.
Yeah, I'm hoping that some of my disappointments with the second half of the season are related to, COVID restrictions and stuff, and that, a lot of stuff suffered because of like changes that had to be made in the way stuff was filmed. There's a lot of projects that suffered because of that, and I'm hoping that that's a big part of what was missing or felt missing in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it for Sandman. We will probably be talking about this again when season 2 eventually comes. So that's going to be way down the line. That's going to be like probably a year or 2 away, I think. So next week we are going to be talking about She-Hulk, and we might also be talking about House of the Dragon. I actually had us on record to talk about She-Hulk and forgot that House of the Dragon was coming out too.
Oh, okay.
Before next week. So we'll probably talk about both of those next week. But until then, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. Will is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. There, if you go to one of the container stories for our podcast, you'll be able to find all of the necessary links to our social media accounts, our Facebook page, everything like that. And you can check in and get in touch with us anywhere there. The best place to reach out to us, though, is on Twitter. Again, at Tyson Gifford, at Voxel Hero. That's the best way to reach us. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.